Guys, you know what I love? Sonic the Hedgehog. You wanna know what I don't love? Well, you see, it's getting beat up in the streets by an old Japanese guy named SEGATA SANSHIRO because I don't own a Sega Saturn. Man, I better get one of those thingos. Well, you see, the slight problem with that is that the Sega Saturn is not only rare, but it completely sucks as a console, and I'm here to tell you why. You see, this console's rare because over here in America, it was planned to release on one day, Saturn Day, until Sega realized that that date was too close to the release of the PlayStation, so they moved it, making it a very rare console since it was only at select retailers, and because of the date change, well, other retailers just decided to completely blacklist Sega, not wanting to work with them again. Not only that, but also here in America, Sega had just released the Sega 32X, an add-on for the Sega Genesis. Not only did this stupid add-on not sell well, but it had basically the same games as the Sega Saturn before Sega Saturn was even announced in America. Not only that, but these ports of the Sega Saturn games were much worse than the ones on the Sega Saturn. Obviously, the 32X was much less powerful than an actual Sega Saturn. This whole product release strategy made consumers think that Sega would be making games for hardware that would soon be outdated by their newer hardware, where they would simply be getting the same games, but slightly souped up a bit. Not to mention that, but the marketing for the Sega Saturn was also just really weird, dude. Like, what the frick are these themes? My favorite Sega characters. Weird Saturn Lady. Muscular Guy. The Magic Genie, and Beanie Boy, and hands. Just hands, not even like a full person, just these hands of a female. You see what I'm trying to get at here? In America, everything was super weird, but in Japan, we had SEGATA SANSHIRO. He was blowing things up, he was throwing people out of windows. If you didn't have a Sega Saturn, you were gonna die! This man was a goddamn legend. This right here playing is his last commercial, where he stops a nuclear missile launched at Sega's headquarters, shoots it into outer space, flies to Saturn, and blows up with it. It is the greatest thing you will ever see in your entire life. Endgame, amazing climax, my ass. Shawshank Redemption, more like I don't care. Back to the Future, more like back to SEGATA SANSHIRO. I'm not sure if you could tell, but I'm very passionate about the Sega mascot. The point I'm trying to get across here is that America sucks, and SEGATA SANSHIRO is our god. Actually, forget what I said at the beginning of the video. I would love if SEGATA SANSHIRO would come into my room, beat me to the pulp, and then feed me a Sega Saturn with Sonic R. Like, if you were just to ask me, that was what I would say would be the ideal way to go out. Not with a bang, but with SEGATA SANSHIRO and Sonic R. You guys know, whenever I get 10,000 subscribers or 1,000, heck, I might even just put it at 1 million subscribers, I'm going to do a live stream where we watch together all the SEGATA SANSHIRO commercials in canonical order to see his life story play out in the best way possible. It will be the greatest thing. It's not going to be some epic 1 hour long Sonic video that explains the meaning of life. Actually, watching SEGATA SANSHIRO's is the meaning of life. Literally, there's nothing you could do that could possibly be better than that. Nothing can top SEGATA SANSHIRO. I swear to God, if I was a little Japanese kid who was living in Japan when these commercials were playing on the TV, I swear to God, I would be dragging my parents down to my local game store so they could buy me a Sega Saturn. This is the greatest thing you will ever see in your entire life. Guys, and this next part, SEGATA SANSHIRO has a canonical love interest in his mini-universe, and you pray to God that you 100% it is a Sega character. That is the greatest thing you will hear all day. Now, here's the part where I will say nothing can top that. Nothing is better than SEGATA SANSHIRO getting a love interest for his mini-universe, so that way there's some stakes at hand, so that when we see him sacrifice himself at the end of his story, you feel like this was truly a magnificent journey. But no, it gets better than that. It gets way better than that. For Sega as a company, for Sega as the company a whole, 60th anniversary, they brought back SEGATA SANSHIRO as a modern reboot where he's a young guy, and during his epic battle, he fights the original SEGATA SANSHIRO. And that even isn't the best part. At the end, this kid is so overwhelmed by SEGATA Sanshiro's amazing presence, he accidentally kicks him all the way to Saturn, making it come full circle. Now, of course, this was a dream, but he still has SEGATA Sanshiro's black belt, so maybe it was all real. Or maybe none of this actually really matters, and these are just some silly commercials for a Sega game console in the 90s that no one really cares about nowadays because it was marketed poorly in the US, and that's where the majority of the Sega fanbase lies. Even if that's all SEGATA Sanshiro is, he obviously means a lot to people like me and others, since SEGATA Sanshiro is a very big part of Sega's history, maybe even as big as Sonic himself. What was the whole point of this video again? To talk about Sega's downfall of the console market and how Sonic could have saved it? I don't really know. But look, here's some footage of Sonic R. Totally the greatest game of all time. Sonic R is this really weird Sega Saturn racing game that was made to fill the gap due to Sonic Extreme's cancellation because it got cancelled and there wasn't that many Sonic games on the Sega Saturn. So, Sonic Extreme's cancellation was probably one of the much larger factors to why Sega Saturn fell behind in terms of the console races and didn't really do. I don't really know what I'm saying. The development of Sonic Extreme is very complex, and there's a lot to discuss there. People almost dying, others being threatened with death. I could probably make an entire hour-long video just discussing it, but that's for another day. So, what amazing games did Sega make to fill the void for the Sega Saturn? They made Sonic R, a collection of the games that also had a 3D hub world, and a port of Sonic 3D Blast, which is just a Sega Genesis game. So basically, the Sega Saturn had literally nothing. Although the most fascinating of the three has to be Sonic Jam. Not only is it a collection of the Sonic games, but it also has a 3D hub world where the player can run around and complete missions. It's actually really fun. It's kind of like Mario 64 where you replay the same level but with different objectives every time. Sega could have made an entire game out of this. Hell, even the Saturn version of Sonic 3D Blast, which was originally a Genesis game, has a brand new 3D special stage. These special stages have a lot in them. Light platforming for some challenge, corkscrews where the player's gravity changes, but it actually feels really good. There's also these cool semi-nighttime underground tunnel sections that change the lighting. And there's these downhole physics? Really? Like the classic games, he rolls and everything. This deserves to be more than just a special stage. They could have used this for a full game, some sort of boost gameplay predecessor? Now, realistically, I have no idea just how taxing or really possible this could have been on a Sega Saturn. But just look at how 3D capable Sonic R is, and look at how 3D capable this is. Lots of games during this time had trouble with pop-up and things just appearing. But this has a beautiful fade that can match some of today's much lower res and lower quality games, which doesn't sound that good before the time. This is amazing. Sega and Traveler's Tales, who worked on these ports, could have really have made something amazing. If a super fully 3D Sonic game with exploration, big levels like Sonic Extreme just couldn't work at the time, they could have easily had some people from Sonic Team, some people from Traveler's Tales work together to create some sort of semi-hybrid of this amazing special stage, Sonic R, and what little we have of Sonic Extreme. A mainline Sonic game, not as big in scope as the others, and definitely not as graphically intensive, could have easily have come out during this time, and could have helped fill the Sonic drought and the void the fans were in at the time. This situation is actually very similar to what we're in now. We honestly have no idea what the next Sonic game will be, and Sega hasn't said anything in a really long while, and lots of fans are starting to get worried. Honestly, I have no idea when the next Sonic game will be announced. It could be announced while I'm even making this video. No one knows, but some small minuscule content to help feed the fans over would really be helpful during this drought that we're in right now. All I'm really trying to say here is that Sonic had a lot of potential, and he still does, but Sega just keeps finding ways to squander or waste it. They have to use this property, use this amazing IP to their full advantage, and stop thinking that Sonic is dead. Because he's not. He's running. He'll be going at full speed.